What happens when one of music's calmest voices steps into daytime television's most combative arena and the entire exchange spirals out of control? Post Malone's Sit Down on The View began as a standard promo stop and somehow became one of the most explosive collisions ever captured on daytime TV. Before we dig into the moment that left the studio frozen, hit subscribe and drop a comment telling us what you believe really went down. The lights hit hard as Post Malone crossed onto the View set, greeted by a mix of applause and low, curious murmurs from the crowd. He eased into the guest chair, tattooed hands resting quietly in his lap, a small, easy smile on his face while the panel locked in. Whoopi Goldberg held the center seat, Joy Behar to her left, the rest of the co-hosts spread along the table. Whoopi opened warm. "Welcome. Thanks for being here. Your new album just dropped, and the reviews are glowing. Walk us through the creative process this time." Post leaned in, voice as relaxed as ever. "Yeah, thank you for having me. This one felt different. I wanted to strip everything back and get honest about where my head's been the last couple years. A lot of it is about fame, isolation, trying to stay real when everybody's got an opinion on who you're supposed to be." Sonny Hostin slid in next. "That honesty is exactly what your fans lock onto. You've always been open about the hard parts. How do you balance putting yourself out there with keeping some things private?" "It's tough," Post nodded. "You share what feels true in the moment. Some of it belongs in the music, some stays just for me. But I try to stay honest because I know people are carrying the same weight. If the songs make them feel a little less alone, that's enough." The talk stayed easy for a few more minutes. Upcoming shows, collaborations, how he'd grown as an artist. Post answered each question with care, and the audience was clearly warming to him. Then Joy Behar shifted in her seat, and the temperature in the room changed. "So, Post," she started, that familiar edge already in her voice. "You've made millions in this business, and here you are talking about isolation and authenticity. Isn't there something a little off about a multimillionaire complaining how hard fame is?" The studio went still. Post's face barely moved, but you could see him weighing the words. "I don't think I was complaining," he said carefully. "I was just being honest about what the experience feels like." "Come on," Joy pressed, leaning closer. "You chose this life. Nobody forced you to become a star. You could walk away tomorrow if you wanted. So when you talk about isolation, it starts to sound like 'Cry Me a River.'" Whoopi tried to step in. "Joy, I think what he's saying is that success doesn't automatically mean happiness." "I know that, Whoopi," Joy shot back, eyes never leaving Post. "But there's a difference between acknowledging it and constantly playing the victim when you're living a life 99% of people would kill for." Post sat up a little straighter, jaw tightening. "I've never played the victim. Not once. I've always said I'm grateful for everything I've got, but just because I'm successful doesn't mean I'm not allowed to be human or talk about real feelings." "Real feelings?" Joy repeated, almost mocking. "Let me ask you something. When you're on that private jet or inside that mansion, are those real feelings still bothering you? Or do they conveniently disappear once you're enjoying all that money?" A collective gasp rolled through the audience. This was no longer light banter. This had turned personal. "That's not fair," Post answered, voice still measured but sharper now. "You don't know anything about my life beyond what shows up on TMZ or wherever. You have no idea what I deal with when the cameras are off." "You're right, I don't," Joy allowed, though her tone made clear she wasn't backing off. "But you're the one who puts it in the music and talks about it in interviews. You can't have it both ways. You can't be the tortured artist and then get upset when someone points out the contradiction." "What contradiction?" Post's voice rose a notch. "That I can be grateful and still struggle? That I can love this career and still find parts of it hard? That's not a contradiction. That's being a complete person." Anna Navarro stepped in, trying to steer things. "I think what Joy might be getting at, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joy, is that sometimes there's a real disconnect between the struggles celebrities talk about and the ones people face in everyday life. Folks at home who can't even cover rent might find it hard to relate, and I understand that. Post turned toward her. I completely get that. I'm not comparing what I'm dealing with to someone fighting just to get by. But I also don't think we should act like mental health only counts if you're broke. Depression doesn't look at your bank account before it shows up. Joy refused to ease off. But you have access to the best therapist, the best treatment, everything money can buy. So forgive me if I'm not tearing up when you're feeling low inside a recording studio that costs more than most people's homes. Why are you being so hostile? Post asked straight out, the calm starting to crack. I came here to talk about my music, to have a real conversation. I didn't show up to get attacked for having feelings. I'm not attacking you, Joy insisted, though her tone said otherwise. I'm challenging you. There's a difference. You're in the public eye. You're influential. When you complain about your life, what message does that send? I'm not complaining, Post pushed back. Frustration clear now. There's a difference between sharing genuine emotion and complaining. I work hard. I appreciate my fans. I try to use this platform the right way. But I'm also a real person who feels real things. Why is that so hard for you to accept? Whoopi tried once more to calm the water. I think we're talking past each other here. Post, nobody's saying you can't have feelings. Joy, I think you're coming on a little strong. Am I? Joy spun toward Whoopi. Or am I just saying out loud what a lot of people are already thinking? This whole celebrity mental health conversation has turned trendy, and sometimes it feels performative. That single word hit like a spark. Post's face flushed. Performative? You think I'm performing? Lady, I've been hospitalized. I've fought substance abuse. I've had nights I didn't even want to wake up. That's not a performance. That's my life. The studio went completely still. Even Joy looked briefly stunned by the rawness, but she recovered fast. And I'm sorry you went through that, she said, though the warmth never quite reached her voice. But you're still here. You're still successful. You're still making money. At some point, don't you have a responsibility to move past it, instead of building a brand around trauma? Post's voice turned incredulous. A brand? You think I built a brand around my trauma? I write songs about what I've lived through, the same way every artist in history has done. Bob Dylan did it. Joni Mitchell did it. Kurt Cobain did it. But when I do it, suddenly it's a brand? Those artists had something to say beyond their personal pain, Joy shot back. They spoke to bigger issues, cultural moments. What are you speaking to besides your own feelings? And that was the moment everything shifted. You could see it lock into place on Post's face, the way his expression hardened, the way he leaned forward in the chair. And if you can't see that, if you think it's just self-indulgent whining, then maybe you're too disconnected from what real people are actually going through to even have this conversation. Scattered applause broke out across the audience, but Joy wasn't finished. Too disconnected? Her eyebrows shot up. I've been in this business for decades. I've sat across from presidents, activists, artists who actually shifted culture. So don't lecture me about being disconnected. Then maybe you've been in it too long. Post fired right back, voice steady but sharp. Maybe you've forgotten what it feels like to be young and scared and still trying to figure out who you are. Maybe you've gotten so comfortable up on this stage that you can't relate to regular people anymore. The other co-hosts traded quick glances, clearly unsure whether to step in or let the storm keep rolling. Whoopi opened her mouth, but Joy was already firing. Comfortable? You want to talk about comfortable? You're a 20-something millionaire who built a career mumbling over beats and covering yourself in tattoos. I worked for every single thing I have. I fought my way up in comedy when women weren't even welcome in the room. So yeah, maybe I don't have a lot of sympathy for someone who struck gold and now wants to act tortured about it. There it is, Post said, a bitter laugh escaping. You think because I'm young and I make a certain kind of music that I didn't earn any of this. You think it just fell into my lap, did it not? Joy challenged. Right place, right time, right sound. You blew up on the internet. That's not exactly grinding through comedy clubs for 20 years. You have no idea what you're talking about, Post shot back, voice rising. I spent years making music in my bedroom, getting rejected over and over, being told I wasn't good enough, that I didn't fit any genre, that I'd never make it. I worked every single day to get here. Just because my path looked different from yours doesn't mean it was easy." Sarah Haynes finally spoke, voice careful. "I think we can acknowledge that everyone's journey is different and everyone's struggles are valid without ranking them against each other." "Thank you," Post said, glancing at her before locking eyes with Joy again. "That's all I'm trying to say. My struggles don't cancel out anyone else's, but they're still real." Joy refused to soften. "Fine, they're real. But when you have millions of fans, mostly young, impressionable kids, and you're constantly putting out this message that life is painful and hard and isolating, what are you actually doing? Are you helping them or just validating their darkest feelings?" "I'm letting them know they're not alone," Post answered without missing a beat. "Do you have any idea how many messages I get from people saying my music saved their life? That it carried them through the worst moments they've ever had? That for the first time they felt understood? That's what I'm accomplishing." "Or maybe," Joy countered, leaning back with arms crossed, "you're romanticizing pain. Maybe you're making depression look artistic and cool, instead of pushing people to actually get help." Post's face flushed. "That's ridiculous. I've been open about therapy, about getting help, about medication. I've never once told anyone to skip treatment. But people also deserve honest music that reflects real emotions, not some cleaned-up version where everything is sunshine and rainbows." "Nobody's asking for sunshine and rainbows," Joy said. "But there's a difference between honesty and wallowing, and a lot of your generation seems to prefer the wallowing." "My generation?" Post repeated, disbelief thick in his voice. "Now you're going after an entire generation? You know what? Maybe the problem isn't that we're wallowing. Maybe the problem is that your generation told us to suck it up and deal with it. And that attitude led to sky-high rates of addiction and depression, and people suffering in silence. Maybe we're just done pretending everything's fine when it's not." The audience split right down the middle, some clapping for Post, others sitting in stunned silence. Alyssa Farah Griffin jumped in, searching for middle ground. "I think there's merit on both sides here. Post, your openness has clearly helped a lot of people. Joy, your point about responsibility and the message being sent is valid too. Maybe what we're really seeing is a generational divide in how we talk about mental health." "It's not a divide," Joy insisted. "It's a reality check. Life has always been hard for everyone. Previous generations didn't have the luxury of making albums about their feelings. They had to work, survive, push through. And look where that got them. Look at the rates of untreated trauma," Post cut in. "Look at the substance abuse, the broken families. That whole suffer in silence mentality didn't work. It just created more pain." "So your solution is to broadcast your pain to millions of people?" Joy asked. "To make it your entire identity?" "It's not my entire identity," Post said, frustration boiling over. "If you actually listen to my music, instead of just judging it, you'd know I also write about love, about hope, about good times with friends. But you don't care about any of that because it doesn't fit the story you've already decided, that I'm just some whiny kid who can't handle success." Joy jabbed a finger toward him. "Don't put words in my mouth. I never said you can't handle success. I said I find it tiresome when wildly successful people act like victims, and I never said I was a victim." Post shouted back, composure finally gone. "Not once. I said I'm human. I said I have feelings. Why is that so threatening to you?" "It's not threatening," Joy answered, voice sharp. "It's annoying. You know what's threatening? Real problems. Poverty, discrimination, violence. Those are the things worth complaining about, not whether your feelings get hurt because fame is hard." "Oh my God," Post said, dragging both hands down his face. "You're completely missing the point. I'm not comparing my problems to any of that. Nobody is. But you're acting like, unless someone is facing the absolute worst circumstances possible, they have no right to struggle. That's insane." Whoopi finally stepped in with more force. "Okay, I think we need to take a breath here. This got heated fast. Because she's attacking me, Post said, gesturing toward Joy. I came here in good faith, and she's been hostile from the jump. I'm asking tough questions, Joy corrected. That's my job. No, you're being condescending and dismissive, Post fired back. There's a difference between tough questions and just being mean. Joy let out a short, sharp laugh. Being mean? This is mean. Try doing stand-up in the 70s as a woman. Try getting told you're not funny because of your gender. Try actually facing real adversity. You don't think I've faced adversity? Post's voice dropped lower, heavier. You don't think I've been told I'm not really hip-hop, not really rock, not really country, that I don't belong anywhere? You don't think I've dealt with addiction, with losing people I love, with hating myself? Just because my bank account is healthy doesn't mean my mind is. Then get help, Joy said bluntly. Stop making albums about it and get professional help. I have help, Post practically yelled. I see a therapist twice a week. I take medication. I work on myself every single day. But that doesn't mean I can't also make art about my experiences. That's what art is, processing life through creativity. Joy shook her head. When I was your age, art meant something bigger than yourself. It meant commenting on society, on injustice, on the human condition beyond your personal feelings. My personal feelings are part of the human condition, Post argued. Mental health is part of the human condition. The fact that you can't see that is exactly the problem. You want art to be about everything except what people actually feel. I want art to matter, Joy said. I want it to challenge people, to make them think, to inspire change, not just validate their sadness. My music does matter, Post said, voice breaking slightly under the emotion. It matters to the people it helps. It matters to the kids who write me letters saying they didn't take their own life because they heard my song and finally felt less alone. That matters. Just because it doesn't matter to you doesn't mean it's worthless. For a moment Joy seemed to pause, then she pressed forward again. And how many of those kids are just using your music as an excuse to stay stuck in their sadness instead of working to get better? That question hit Post harder than anything else she'd said. His face went pale, then flushed deep with anger. That is the most ignorant, harmful thing you've said this entire interview, he said slowly, voice shaking. You're blaming me for other people's mental illness. You're suggesting that my honesty is keeping people sick. Do you have any idea how damaging that perspective is? I'm suggesting, Joy answered carefully, that maybe your influence comes with more responsibility than you want to accept. I accept plenty of responsibility, Post said, but I'm not responsible for fixing everyone's problems. I'm a musician, not a therapist. I make music that's honest. What people do with that is up to them. But maybe it should be up to you, Joy pressed. Maybe when you have that platform, when you have that influence, you need to think harder about the messages you're sending. Post stood up from his chair. The sudden movement froze everyone in place. He wasn't walking out, but he was done sitting still for this. You want to talk about messages? Let's talk about the message you're sending right now. You're telling everyone watching that if you're successful, you don't get to have problems. You're telling people that mental health only matters if you're poor. You're saying that honest emotional expression is just whining. Those are dangerous messages. Whoopi stood as well, hands raised in a calming gesture. Post, please sit down. Let's all just take a second. No, Post said firmly, not aggressive, just absolute. I'm tired of sitting here being lectured by someone who clearly has no respect for what I do or who I am. I came here to talk about music. I didn't come here to be psychoanalyzed and insulted by someone who's already decided I'm everything wrong with my generation. Joy stayed seated, but her posture locked rigid. If that's what you took from this conversation, then maybe you're more sensitive than I thought. Sensitive? Post repeated with a hollow laugh. That's always the insult, isn't it? When men talk about feelings, they're sensitive, they're weak, they need to toughen up. That's exactly the toxic mentality that's literally killing people. Don't be dramatic, Joy said, dismissive. Dramatic? Post's voice climbed again. Men account for over 70% of deaths by their own hand in this country. And you know why? Because they're taught that talking about feelings is weakness. Because people like you tell them to just deal with it. So no, I'm not being dramatic, I'm being realistic. Sonny Hostin spoke up, measured and calm. Post, I think what you're doing is important. I think Joy's concerns come from a different perspective. But I don't believe anyone here is trying to diminish mental health issues. Really? Post turned toward her. Because that's exactly what it feels like. She's been diminishing them this entire time. Every single thing I've said, she's shot down. Every experience I've shared, she's invalidated. If that's not diminishing mental health, I don't know what is. Joy finally stood, matching his energy. I haven't invalidated anything. I've challenged you. And the fact that you can't tell the difference proves my point. You're so used to everyone agreeing with you, so used to fans worshiping everything you say, that the second someone pushes back, you fall apart. I'm not falling apart, Post through gritted teeth. I'm standing up for myself, and for everyone who's ever been made to feel like their pain doesn't matter, because they have money or success or whatever arbitrary standard you want to set. My standard isn't arbitrary, Joy countered. My standard is perspective. My standard is gratitude. My standard is recognizing that despite your struggles, you're still incredibly privileged. I've never denied my privilege, Post shot back. Not once. But privilege doesn't equal happiness. Privilege doesn't cure depression. Privilege doesn't make trauma disappear. And the fact that you think it should is honestly sad. The audience sat completely silent now, hanging on every word. The other co-host looked ready to jump in but had no idea how. This had gone far beyond any normal interview. You know what I think is sad? Joy said, her voice cutting. I think it's sad that someone with your resources, your opportunities, your platform, chooses to focus so much energy on how hard your life is. Imagine if you used that platform to highlight people who are really struggling, people who don't have your advantages. I do, Post answered, voice strained with frustration. I donate millions to charity. I visit hospitals. I work with mental health organizations. I use my platform constantly to support causes I believe in. But you don't know any of that because you didn't bother to research me beyond your preconceived notions. I know plenty about you, Joy insisted. You know what you've decided about me, Post corrected. You decided before I even walked out here that I was some spoiled rich kid who makes sad music and complains too much. You weren't interested in having an actual conversation. You just wanted to prove your point. Joy's eyes narrowed. My point is that your generation needs to stop navel-gazing and start doing something productive with your pain. What do you think music is? Post practically shouted. What do you think art is? It's taking pain and turning it into something that connects people, that helps people, that creates meaning. That is productive. Just because it doesn't look like what your generation did doesn't make it less valuable. Your generation loves to act like they invented struggle, Joy said. Like nobody before you ever felt sad or anxious or depressed. We all did. We just didn't make it our whole personality. Post let out a bitter laugh. No, you just self-medicated in silence and pretended everything was fine. You just passed your trauma down to your kids and told them to deal with it. You just created a society where asking for help was shameful. Congratulations on that legacy. How dare you? Joy's voice dropped low and dangerous. How dare I what? Post challenged. Tell the truth? Point out that maybe the way things used to be done wasn't perfect? You've been judging me this entire time, but the second I push back, suddenly I'm the one out of line. Whoopi stepped physically between them, presence commanding. Okay, that's enough from both of you. This has gotten completely out of hand. Post took a step back, running both hands through his hair, visibly trying to steady himself with deep breaths. Joy crossed her arms, jaw locked tight. I think we need to wrap this up, Whoopi said, looking from one to the other. This clearly wasn't what anyone expected today. Post turned straight to the camera, bypassing the hosts completely. To anyone watching this who struggles with mental health, who's ever been told their feelings don't matter because of their circumstances, who's been made to feel weak just for being honest, I see you. Your pain is valid. Your experience is real. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Joy scoffed out loud. Of course. Make yourself the hero of this story. Post looked back at her, and for the first time his face wasn't angry. It was simply tired and disappointed. I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm trying to be honest, something you clearly have no interest in. I've been nothing but honest, Joy shot back. No, Post said quietly, you've been cruel. There's a difference. The words hung heavy and final in the air. Joy opened her mouth, then seemed to think better of it. The silence stretched long, uncomfortable, loaded. Whoopi cleared her throat. Well, this has certainly been one of our more intense interviews. Post, your new album is out now. Despite everything, we appreciate you coming on. Post nodded slowly, still looking at Joy. Thanks for having me. Though I'm not sure appreciate is the word I'd use. He started walking off the set, then paused and turned one last time. You know what the saddest part of this is? You could have actually had an interesting conversation about mental health, about generational differences, about art and responsibility. But you were so locked into your narrative, so determined to put me in my place, that you missed the entire opportunity. That's on you, not me. With that, he walked off, leaving the co-hosts in stunned silence. The audience didn't know whether to clap or stay quiet. A few people offered hesitant applause, but mostly a thick, awkward tension filled the studio. Joy spoke first, voice defensive. Someone had to ask the tough questions. There's tough questions, Sarah Haynes said softly, shaking her head. And then there's that. Sonny nodded in agreement. I think that crossed the line, Joy. Whoopi looked exhausted. Let's go to commercial. As the cameras cut away, the weight of what had just unfolded began to settle. This wasn't simply a heated interview. This was a moment destined to be replayed and argued over for weeks. Post Malone had been pushed to his breaking point on live television, and the exchange had touched something deeper, a fundamental divide in how different generations view vulnerability, success, and mental health. So what do you think? Was Joy Behar right to challenge Post Malone the way she did? Or did she cross a line she shouldn't have? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and make sure you subscribe for more breakdowns of the most explosive moments in entertainment.